inviting me. Previously I've been here sat where you are. I see a couple of comrades from before in the crowd that I recognise. And obviously Stop the War is it's where one of my political idols, Tony Benn, did a lot of great work, and so it's a real honour to be asked to speak here tonight. And as we mentioned, I've been asked to speak off the back of a speech I made at the TBC last week. Now initially we weren't going to speak, we were just going to vote against it, but we caught wind that the EC was going to give qualified support or support the motion. And for me, I just thought that was a bit of a disgrace. I've spent 15 years as an FBU official sticking into the EC at the FBU, and I sit on the EC. I don't get quite to do that now, quite public anyway. So I thought this is my opportunity to have a go at the General Council, because we opened up conference by reiterating our opposition to war, and we stood and we took a minute's silence. And yet when this motion that was dropped for bombs came along, they took a position of supporting it, and I pulled it out. So one of our early General Secretaries said that there's a world beyond the fire station bay doors, and I stand here tonight as an FBU trade unionist and saying on behalf of FBU members across the country that we send our solidarity to the firefighters and emergency service workers in Ukraine that are operating in appalling conditions to try and provide that humanitarian service that we do. And we're committed to send and provide support and solidarity wherever practical, and support within relevant trade unions. So I stand here moving that as part of the Executive Council statement that we made earlier in March this year. Now there are no paths to peace through superior firepower. We can only bomb the world into pieces, we can't bomb it into peace. So the Executive Council statement called for an immediate ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, and talked about the risk of it spreading and turning into a more global and international conflict. We also noted that it's a proxy war between Russia and NATO expansion, and we want to see an end to that as well. The UK has its own experience of rushing into military conflicts, and at the TBC conference I made reference to Afghanistan and Iraq. 179 and 454 are the number of British service personnel that were killed in that conflict. I stand here as a son of a paratrooper with that age-old comment about a bayonet being a worker at both ends, and so is what's happening in Ukraine, and that's why it's important that we oppose war.
Could you speak up a little bit?
Okay. The working class has nothing to gain from this war. I may be preaching to the converted, but I'm sure that civilians, that civilians are increasingly the victims in these wars, and more so their children. Every child has a right to life and to love, and it shouldn't be snuffed out before time. A good friend on my watch, Newell, talk about him from time to time when I make speeches because he comes up with good one-liners. And I won't quote him again, but he said, "There is no justice, just us." And he's right, it does fall to us. And the brave working class communities in Russia who have already mobilised to protest against this invasion, despite state oppression. And we condemn that government, but we also condemn our government, being the hypocrites that they are, for calling out that oppression, when our government is moving bills.
Excuse me, you have to put your mouth closer to the mic.
So we call. Is it on? So we're calling out our government for their hypocrisy due to the fact that they're moving the police crime sentences bill, which serves to only its only authoritarian processes on our right to strike. So we think they've got some cheek and some real hypocrisy in criticising Russian response when they're doing the same thing themselves here. And for the UK, the war with Russia and Ukraine is an opportunity to make money. So long as the bombs are flowing, it's a chance to make money. They don't care about who they harm, just so long as the bombs keep flowing and the war machine gets paid. The FBU also condemns any far-right or fascist movement that seeks to gain from this conflict, either side of the war. We know that it's working class people who will be disproportionately feeling the pain of this war and associated economic sanctions. And it must not be lost on us the lessons that we learned from Afghanistan and Iraq, that today's supposed allies could be tomorrow's foes. We've heard time and again about the cost of living crisis that's been mentioned tonight already across the globe. We've heard about the need for funding for our services and communities, and our class need for those services to be funded. We're seeing workers ballot, we're seeing workers strike for pay, and yet we always seem to have money for the war machine. I've never heard a general say they can't afford to bomb someone. Now that funding, if redirected, could transform our lives. Within 10 years we could see a different world, another world is possible, and it could do much more to change the world than any of the conflicts that we've seen since World War II put together. Some of the greatest talent, unfortunately, works within that military-industrial complex. And if we redeployed them and diversified their skills, we could have a world that works better for us and not have them dividing and building stuff that could end our world. Now, we've heard from speakers tonight about the government already. The FBU, we recognise how this government operates with a crisis such as COVID, 150,000 families devastated or more. We don't have any confidence in this government being able to do anything about the Ukraine crisis, and certainly no confidence in them to deal with the crises that we're dealing with within our own borders. And ultimately, it always comes down to us to hold power to account. Only the dead have seen the end of war. Remember the dead and fight for the living. Thanks for asking me.